Hi everyone and welcome back. In this video tutorial here, I will try to explain how to use the lattice deformer here inside Maya. So the lattice deformer here inside Maya is a very handy deformer to use to deform your objects using just the vertices of the lattice itself. So the lattice here is a free-form deformer that will allow you to cover certain objects, for example, and deform that objects using the lattice vertices. So here's what I mean by deforming the lattice using the vertices. Let's, for example, go in and create a sphere object here. You notice that the sphere has multiple vertices here, so we have many vertices to work with. However, for example, if we go ahead and go to the object mode, you can see that it can become a little bit tedious to go in and start adjusting a selection here of either faces or vertices. You can see that we're also getting some harsh and sharp results. So this is where we can use a free-form deformer lattice instead. This will allow us to deform our objects much more organically and smoothly as well. So for instance, we can go in and either apply that lattice to the whole mesh here. So for example, I will do that first and then show you how to apply the lattice deformer to a specific selection of your model. For example, here first we'll start by selecting the whole mesh. We'll go to the deform section here from the rigging menu. Make sure that you are selecting the deform tab, and we want to select this lattice deformer here. So we will click on this square icon here to bring the settings dialog box, and from here you can see that we have few objects or few settings to work with. Let's make sure we are selecting our sphere here, and here we will notice a few settings that you can change. First, we have the divisions. These are the divisions, or in other words, the resolution of the cage. So we will apply a cage to this mesh here, and that cage will contain this amount of resolution here. So this will give you either less or more lattice vertices and points to adjust if you want, for example, more flexibility and more points to give you some more flexibility over the way you deform your object. You can go in and increase the divisions here. Now for the local divisions here, this will control the smoothness of the way that your object is being deformed. You will see this later when we start adjusting and deforming our mesh, so we can skip this for now. For the positioning here, so we'll center our cage around the selected object here. So the cage here is going to be created and centered around our selection, or in this case it is going to be the sphere in general. So this is the center around selection, this positioning here setting. The grouping, however, this one here is very important. We want to check this to enable it. This will group the base cage and the lattice cage together. When we start creating a lattice deformer, Maya will go ahead and create two cages. We have the base cage and we have the lattice cage. The base cage is going to be sitting around, not moving at all. It is going to be sitting in a fixed position. However, what it is going to be moving is the lattice points. So when we move the lattice points, the difference and the distance between the lattice points and the base cage, the one that is not moving, is what's going to give us the deformation. Okay, so this is very important to understand now at this point here. And when we apply the cage here to this mesh, you will understand this even further. But now you want to make sure that the group, base and lattice together is selected. Maya will go ahead and using this option here, it will group both cages together. So when we start, for example, moving this sphere here, or any kind of control or bound objects here inside Maya, that group that contains both the base and the lattice will move together. So it will contain both cages and they will move together, and this way here we are not going to get any unwanted deformations. So this is the group, base, and lattice together. The auto parent selection here is not going to be very important here for this kind of results here. So you can either go ahead and check this on or off. So Maya will go ahead and parent that lattice here to this selection here. So however, in this case here, we don't want this. The freeze mode is not going to be important in our case. So we want to just go in and hit the create button. Once we do that, Maya will go ahead and give us this lattice here. So this is the lattice. You can see that if we go into the F8, the lattice here also, it is an object inside Maya, and it has a component mode as well. So we can go in and press the F8 on our keyboard, and right away you can see that we can select the vertices of our cage. And once we select the vertices and start moving those around, here is the kind of effect that we get. Let me go in and turn the wireframe on shaded option on so you can see the wireframe and keep track of our topology of the sphere. So you can see here that we are able to deform the mesh overall using just these 4 vertices, which is really cool in this case, since we don't need to go in and start handling all those vertices here in our original mesh. So using just the specific amount of vertices that we want, we can deform our mesh much more easily and much more organically. You can see here we are getting some nice and smoother results, which is looking kind of cool. Okay, great. Now let me go in and show you that base cage we have here that Maya have gone ahead and created for us. So in order to do so and see that cage or that base cage, we will go to the outliner, and you can see that Maya, using that grouping option we selected previously, you can see that it has grouped both the base and the lattice cages both together here. So if you want to start moving this around, you can see that they are moving both at the same time here. So we can parent this group here, for example, to any objects that is moving here. So let's say, for example, that the sphere is moving. We can go in and parent this group here to the moving sphere, and with that we can preserve the deformations that we are getting in our sphere. So this is a really nice option here. The base cage here in Maya, you can see if we go in and turn the visibility of our lattice off, if we select the base, here is the base cage for our lattice deformer, and the difference between these two cages here is what give us the deformations. So if we select the lattice here and start moving the vertices of our lattice, you can see that the cage or the base cage is remaining fixed. Here is the box of the base cage. However, here's the deformed lattice, and the difference between these two, or the distance between these two vertices here, it is what's giving us this deformation. So this is how the lattice work here inside Maya. Okay, so this is a very nice feature and deformer inside Maya that you can use to deform pretty much anything that you can think of here. Let's go ahead now and dig a little bit deeper inside the settings of our lattice here. So let's go back to the object mode, and if we select our lattice here, you can see that we have this shape or this lattice shape node, and this here, it is the resolution that we saw previously in the settings box of the lattice. So these divisions here are the same that we are getting here. So we can, for example, go ahead and increase the resolution of this cage here if you want to get even flexible results. For example, here, if I go into the object mode and start moving those points around, you can see that I'm getting a linear deformations here. However, we can go in and go back and select our lattice here and increase our settings here. Let's say that we add 5 here in both the ST and mu. You can see that by doing that, I'm able now to get much more control point that I can use to deform the mesh. And now if I go to the object mode, you can see that I'm able to get much more flexibility in my deformations. So this is one way on how to do that. You can see now I'm deforming just a section of the mesh instead of the entire upper section, just like we had previously. And by increasing the resolution of our lattice here, we can have much more points to work with and much more flexibility. So this depends, of course, on what you want. So you have the option for that. Okay, so this is the kind of deformation that we are getting. Let's say now we move and see other options of this lattice here. We will select this time the FFD. This is the lattice itself here, and we have these local influence settings. You can also get to that if we press the Control A to open the attributes editor. If you go in and select this FFD tab, here is the local influences. If you select the lattice shape, here is the divisions, or in other words, the resolution that we just saw. In our case, we will select the FFD1. So this is the node that is controlling the smoothness of the deformation. And if I start adjusting these local deformations, let's say we take this, put a value of 3, you will notice that, let me go ahead and show you that by hitting the Control Z a few times and Control Y to redo, Control Z, Control Y, you can see that I'm getting much smoother results here. Let's go ahead and increase that to 4 to illustrate this much further. So you can see now I'm able to get much smoother results. If I go in and put in a 1 value, you will see that I'm gonna get some harsh values here. It is by default, it is set to 2. So this is the value of 2. Here is the 2, and here is the 4. So if you start increasing this up and up, Maya will go ahead and smooth even more the deformations that you get. So this is going to be up to you and the results that you want to get. Either some low values like this to get some harsh and sharp deformations, or some really high values here to get some more smoother and natural looking deformations. So this is the local influences in a nutshell, and how to use that to smooth the deformations of our lattice deformer. Alright, great. Here we can also take the sphere, and you can also move this around this cage here. Since it is not parented to anything, you can see that if I move this sphere here, I'm getting other kind of deformations here. So if I get this sphere out, it is not controlled by the lattice anymore. However, if I go in and move that in, you can see that it is now influenced by the lattice deformer. And this option here, the outside lattice, is what's controlling that. For example, if I take the sphere and get it out of the lattice, if I change this to all, you can see that I'm getting a different kind of result, fall off as well. Okay, so this is how it is going to work. You can see that it is kind of falling. We have a kind of different fall off than just using the inside. The inside means that we are not going to get any deformations outside, just inside. However, if we change that here, we are going to get some deformations even if we get our sphere out of the lattice. Okay, so this is another option here to take into consideration. However, I'm going to let this here set to inside. So in the second part of this video tutorial about how the lattice deformer works inside Maya, I have gone ahead and stripped out the previous lattice that we have added to the sphere, because I want to show you how to add the lattice to specific regions of your mesh. So in order to do that, it is very simple. Just make sure to grab either the faces that you want to select for a certain object, or you can convert, for example, this selection here, this face selection, into vertices by holding down the Control key and the right mouse button, choosing the vertices option here. Maya will convert that selection to vertices, and now you can go to the Deform tab here and select the lattice deformer. If I go to the wireframe unshaded here and activate that, you can see by the time that I start adjusting or entering the component mode of my lattice deformer here, you can see I'm able to deform just this section that I have selected previously, which is kind of cool. To localize the deformations of a certain object, you can do that. So this is very handy in this case. Super cool. And you may go and use the lattice shape here node to increase the resolution of the cage, for example, so something like this. Okay, great. So you have that option here, and this can be really handy. So if I delete the lattice here, think of this sphere here as a face of a certain character. You can, for example, select these faces here as just an example, so something like this, and think of this selection here as the eyebrows. So using the lattice deformer, we can rig and create an eyebrow control very easily. So let's go in and convert our selection by holding down the control key and the right mouse button, choosing to vertices and to vertices, or you may just preserve the faces and go in directly to the lattice option here and apply that. Oops, you can see that I have selected these points here, so I will go again and select those faces here. Okay, great. Let's make sure that nothing is selected behind, and let's convert our selection to vertices, and let's go in and apply that lattice deformer. You can see the lattice is now localized to just this area here, which is kind of great. And now you can go in and use the lattice point here to control the movement of those points. You can see that now we have successfully created some eyebrow control. So think of this like eyebrows. You can see we have the left eyebrow of the character raised up, and you can add more sections here to give you more flexibility. So this is what we are going to do next. Let's go and select our lattice deformer here, and let's go to lattice shape node and increase the number of divisions for each of these channels here. And right away you can see that now we have more points to work with, and this can give you more flexibility over the rig that you create. So pretty good stuff, right? Cool. You can go in and smooth the sphere to see this better. You can see now we are getting some harsh deformations. So let's go to the modeling tab here, and under the mesh let's add a smooth mesh here. And now if we start adjusting those lattice points again, so here's the eyebrow control that we have managed to get using just the lattice deformer. So how simple is that? Very cool stuff. And you can use the options that the lattice deformer give to us. You can either use the divisions here to increase the resolution of the lattice, or go to the attributes editor and grab this FFD here and use the local influences here to smooth out the results. For example, if you find that the results that you are getting are kind of harsh, you can go in and use the local influences here. You can bump this up to values like this, 5, and you can now see we are getting a much smoother curve here and much more organic results. Oh, pretty good stuff, right? So the lattice deformer again is very handy inside Maya. And one thing I would like here to mention is, if you want to adjust the selection of vertices that you have done previously after you have applied the lattice deformer, you can do that very easily. Let's go in and remove that poly smooth node here by selecting it, copy its name and paste it in the select by name field and hitting the delete key to delete that. And we can go to the lattice deformer here, and let's go back to the rigging menu and find the deform tab, and here the edit membership tool. So once you select the lattice here, you will see that Maya will highlight the points that are being affected by the lattice deformer here. And so if you hold down the control and click over a highlighted vertex, Maya will go in and remove that point from the lattice deformer. So let me grab again the lattice here. I will go to the object mode of the lattice and choose the edit membership tool. And now if you hold down the control key, you will see that Maya will remove this point here from the lattice deform. Okay, and if you want to add those again, you can hold down the shift key and add. Let's see now if those points here that were selected before are being affected by the lattice deformer or not. So let's go ahead and see. Let's select or go to the component mode of the lattice here, and as you can see, yes, they are not being controlled by the lattice deformer anymore. So here's the points that I was talking about. So these 3 points here, I have removed them from the lattice deformer using the edit membership tool, and using the or holding the control key and clicking on those vertices, Maya have gone ahead and get rid of the influence that they were getting from the lattice deformer. And again, if you want to add the vertices, new vertices to your selection or to the lattice deformer here, just make sure that you are selecting the lattice deformer in the object mode. Go to the deform, edit membership tool, and make sure to hold down the shift key and click on the vertices that you want to add. Okay, so now if I go in and start playing around with the, let's go to the select tool, let's go to the component mode of my lattice deformer here. If I start moving this up, so you can see now those points are being affected again with the lattice deformer. So that's how to remove or add another selection to the lattice deformer here. So again, the lattice deformer here can serve many purposes. One of those purposes is rigging some eyebrows. You have saw how that was very easy to use. We have managed to create some really nice looking eyebrow control. And so the lattice deformer here inside Maya is very important. So feel free to go ahead and play around with its settings and play around with it in all kind of setups, so that you can even more grasp the lattice deformer and start working with it much more comfortably.